Welcome back to XRP Insider, your trusted source for the latest XRP news, Ripple updates, and the biggest developments shaping the future of crypto. Today's update is massive because XRP is once again sitting at one of the most important price levels we've seen in months, and investors around the world are watching closely. As of May 10, 2026, XRP is trading around the $1.41 to $1.42 range. And while some traders expected stronger movement after the recent breakout attempts, the market is actually showing something much more important right now: resilience. Even after weeks of pressure, XRP continues to hold above critical support zones, and many analysts believe this consolidation phase could be setting up the next major move. The overall market sentiment has shifted from fear to cautious optimism, especially after the regulatory clarity Ripple achieved earlier this year. Institutional attention is growing rapidly, ETF inflows are climbing, and some of the largest financial institutions in the world are now being connected to Ripple and the XRP Ledger. This is no longer just speculation from the XRP community. We are now seeing real developments happening inside the global banking system. And today we're breaking down everything you need to know. One of the biggest stories pushing XRP higher recently came after reports surfaced regarding UBS and its exposure to Ripple through a new SEC-related filing. This development immediately caught the attention of institutional investors because UBS is not just another bank. We're talking about one of the most influential financial institutions in the world, managing trillions of dollars in assets. The moment traders saw Ripple being connected to institutions of this size, confidence around XRP began growing once again. Many longtime XRP holders believe this is exactly the type of institutional validation they have been waiting years to see. What's even more interesting is the timing. This news arrived while XRP was already consolidating near a key breakout zone, which added even more momentum to bullish expectations. Analysts across the crypto space started discussing whether institutional accumulation is quietly taking place behind the scenes. Some market watchers even pointed out that the recent sideways movement may not actually be weakness at all. Instead, it could be strategic positioning before larger players make their move. When major institutions begin entering markets, they rarely chase prices aggressively. They often accumulate slowly during periods of uncertainty, and many traders believe that's exactly what may be happening with XRP right now. At the same time, another massive development has completely changed the conversation surrounding Ripple and the XRP Ledger. Reports indicate that Ripple has successfully completed a historic settlement on the XRPL in collaboration with JPMorgan and Mastercard. If these integrations continue expanding, this could represent one of the biggest real-world utility moments XRP has ever experienced. According to the reports, the XRP Ledger is now being connected to live institutional banking systems involving cross-border tokenized treasury settlements. That is an enormous statement because it moves XRP beyond simple crypto speculation and places it directly into financial infrastructure discussions. For years, Ripple supporters argued that the company was building technology specifically for banks and institutions, and now many investors believe those claims are finally becoming reality. The crypto market reacted strongly to these developments because traders understand the importance of utility. Speculative hype can push prices temporarily, but real adoption creates long-term value. The idea that global financial entities could begin utilizing XRPL technology for real settlement systems has reignited bullish excitement throughout the XRP community. Investors who stayed patient through the difficult years of lawsuits and uncertainty are now beginning to feel like the market is finally recognizing Ripple's long-term vision. Another critical factor driving optimism is the incredible whale accumulation taking place behind the scenes. Data shows that wallets holding more than 1 million XRP accumulated over 1.2 billion XRP tokens during the first quarter of 2026. That kind of accumulation is not normal retail behavior. Large wallet movements like this are often viewed as signs that high net worth investors or institutions are positioning themselves ahead of future developments. What makes this even more important is the fact that accumulation continued despite price suppression and market hesitation. Usually, when investors lose confidence, whales reduce exposure or wait on the sidelines. But in XRP's case, the opposite appears to be happening. Big holders continue increasing their positions, while retail traders remain uncertain about short-term price action. Historically, whale behavior has often acted as an early indicator for major market shifts. When whales accumulate aggressively during periods of consolidation, It can signal growing confidence in future upside potential. Many analysts believe these large holders are focusing less on short-term volatility and more on the broader institutional narrative forming around Ripple. They see expanding banking integrations, ETF momentum, regulatory clarity, and growing adoption, and they may believe the current XRP price still significantly undervalues where the asset could eventually trade. Speaking of ETF momentum, this has become one of the strongest bullish catalysts for XRP in 2026. Ever since XRP officially gained commodity classification earlier this year, institutional interest has exploded. According to current reports, cumulative spot XRP ETF inflows have already reached approximately $1.44 billion. That number is incredibly important because ETFs provide traditional investors with easier access to XRP exposure without needing to directly manage crypto wallets or exchanges. Once traditional finance opens the door to crypto products, liquidity can increase very quickly. We already saw what happened with Bitcoin ETFs and how they transformed market participation. Many XRP supporters now believe the asset could follow a similar path if institutional demand continues accelerating. Analysts say ETF inflows create a completely different type of market structure because they introduce longer-term investment behavior rather than short-term speculative trading. This can reduce volatility over time while strengthening price floors during corrections. The fact that XRP is attracting billions in inflows so early after gaining commodity status is being viewed as a major sign of confidence from the broader financial world. Investors are beginning to realize that XRP is no longer fighting for legitimacy in the same way it was during the SEC lawsuit years. And that brings us directly to the legal side of the story, which may be the single biggest reason sentiment around XRP has changed so dramatically. The long-running legal battle between Ripple and the SEC has officially concluded, ending one of the most important court cases in crypto history. For years, uncertainty surrounding the lawsuit acted like a massive weight, holding XRP back while other cryptocurrencies moved higher. Exchanges were cautious, institutions avoided exposure, and many retail investors stayed away because they feared regulatory consequences. But now, with that legal cloud finally removed, Ripple has entered a completely different phase. Investors are no longer debating whether XRP will survive. Instead, the conversation has shifted toward how far XRP could potentially grow within a regulated financial framework. Many market participants believe the conclusion of the SEC case created a foundation for institutional adoption, because companies now have clearer guidance regarding XRP's status. This clarity has already started influencing investor behavior, and analysts say the full impact may not even be visible yet. Sometimes markets take months to fully absorb major regulatory changes, especially when those changes affect institutional participation on a global scale. Another major development investors are closely watching is the Clarity Act, which many believe could reshape the digital asset industry in the United States. The legislation is expected to provide additional legal structure for cryptocurrencies and blockchain-based assets, potentially creating a more stable environment for innovation and institutional participation. Right now, many crypto companies still operate under uncertainty because regulations remain fragmented and inconsistent. But if the Clarity Act passes with strong provisions, it could dramatically improve confidence across the entire market. XRP supporters are especially optimistic because Ripple has already positioned itself as one of the most regulation-focused companies in crypto. Analysts believe Ripple may benefit more than many competitors if clearer legal frameworks are introduced. The market is treating this summer as a potentially pivotal moment because investors understand that regulatory clarity often attracts institutional capital. Big financial players prefer predictable environments, and legislation like the Clarity Act could remove many of the concerns preventing larger adoption. Traders are already speculating that positive movement on the bill could act as another catalyst for XRP price expansion later this year. Even cautious analysts admit that the combination of legal clarity and institutional integration creates a fundamentally stronger outlook than XRP had just a few years ago. Ripple's banking ambitions have also reached another major milestone after the company received conditional approval for a U.S. National Trust Bank charter from the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency back in late 2025. Now, as of April 2026, the system has reportedly become fully operational. This is an extremely important step because it allows Ripple to offer digital asset custody services within the regulated U.S. banking framework. In simple terms, Ripple is moving closer to becoming deeply integrated into regulated financial infrastructure rather than operating purely as a crypto company outside the traditional system. Many investors believe this transition could significantly strengthen institutional confidence in Ripple's ecosystem. Banks and large financial firms are much more comfortable working with regulated entities, especially when dealing with custody and settlement services involving digital assets. This banking expansion also supports Ripple's broader strategy of positioning XRP and XRPL as infrastructure tools rather than speculative assets alone. The more Ripple becomes embedded inside regulated financial systems, the harder it becomes for critics to dismiss the project as temporary hype. Supporters argue that Ripple is playing a long-term game focused on compliance, partnerships, and institutional functionality. And recent developments seem to support that narrative more strongly than ever before. Now let's talk about the actual price structure, because this is where things get especially interesting for traders. XRP has been coiling for nearly 3 months inside a tightening range, and many analysts believe the market is approaching a decision point. Consolidation periods like this often create explosive moves once resistance finally breaks. Right now, the key level everyone is watching is the $1.50 zone. Analysts say a strong daily close above that level could trigger significant momentum toward the $1.70 range relatively quickly. The reason this level matters so much is because it represents both psychological resistance and technical breakout confirmation. Traders want to see proof that buyers can maintain control above that zone before expecting a larger continuation move. If XRP successfully breaks and holds above $1.50, market sentiment could shift very rapidly from cautious optimism to aggressive bullish momentum. Social media discussions, trading volume, and retail participation would likely increase dramatically. However, analysts are also warning traders to remain patient because fake breakouts remain possible in volatile crypto markets. The next few weeks could determine whether XRP enters a stronger expansion phase or continues consolidating before another attempt higher. Most short-term analyst forecasts for May 2026 currently place XRP between $1.40 and $1.60, which reflects the market's uncertainty while still maintaining an overall bullish tone. What's important here is that even conservative analysts are not predicting major collapses despite recent volatility. That alone says a lot about how much sentiment has improved. Earlier in XRP's history, any sign of weakness would trigger widespread fear due to the SEC case and lack of institutional confidence. But today, traders are approaching pullbacks differently. Many now view dips as opportunities rather than warning signs. The broader market structure appears healthier because XRP has stronger support from institutional narratives, legal clarity, and adoption developments. Some technical analysts have also pointed out that XRP's current consolidation resembles previous accumulation phases before large upward moves. Of course, nothing in crypto is guaranteed, and short-term volatility can still surprise the market. But overall, the tone among analysts has shifted significantly compared to previous years. Instead of debating survival, most discussions now focus on timing, breakout confirmation, and long-term growth potential. Long-term price predictions for XRP remain one of the hottest debates in crypto right now. Bullish projections for the end of 2026 range anywhere from $2.80 to as high as $8, depending on ETF inflows, institutional adoption, and the successful implementation of the Clarity Act. Some analysts believe XRP reaching the upper end of those targets would require aggressive institutional expansion, combined with major market-wide bullish momentum. Others argue that even moderate adoption growth could still push XRP well above current levels, because the asset remains relatively undervalued compared to its potential role in global finance. Supporters often point to Ripple's banking relationships, payment infrastructure goals, and expanding regulatory standing as reasons why XRP could eventually become far more significant than many investors currently realize. Skeptics, however, continue warning that crypto markets remain unpredictable and heavily influenced by macroeconomic conditions. Rising interest rates, global liquidity shifts, or unexpected regulations could still slow momentum across the industry. But even with those concerns, it's difficult to ignore how dramatically XRP's narrative has changed over the past year. The combination of legal victory, ETF momentum, institutional integrations, and whale accumulation has created one of the strongest bullish foundations XRP has seen in a very long time. What's also fascinating is how sentiment inside the XRP community itself has evolved. For years, many holders felt frustrated as XRP underperformed compared to other major cryptocurrencies during periods of market excitement. The SEC lawsuit created constant uncertainty, and critics frequently claimed Ripple would never recover. But now the mood has shifted from defensive survival to growing confidence. Longtime holders who remained patient during the difficult years now feel validated, seeing institutions, regulators, and financial firms increasingly interact with Ripple's ecosystem. Social media discussions surrounding XRP have become noticeably more optimistic, especially as mainstream financial entities begin appearing in Ripple-related headlines. Even traders who were previously skeptical are starting to reconsider their positions because the market environment today looks completely different from what it did just a few years ago. Momentum in financial markets is often driven not only by fundamentals, but also by narrative shifts, and XRP's narrative is clearly changing. Instead of being seen primarily as a legal risk asset, XRP is increasingly being discussed as a regulated institutional infrastructure play. That transformation could become extremely important for long-term investor perception moving forward. Another important point investors should watch closely is the broader macroeconomic environment, because crypto markets do not move in isolation. While XRP-specific developments have been incredibly positive recently, the entire digital asset market still depends partly on global liquidity conditions and investor risk appetite. If central banks maintain supportive monetary conditions and institutional capital continues flowing into crypto products, assets like XRP could benefit significantly. On the other hand, if broader financial markets experience instability, short-term volatility could still impact even fundamentally strong projects. This is why many experienced traders focus on both technical analysis and macroeconomic trends at the same time. XRP's future may not depend only on Ripple's success, but also on whether the overall crypto market continues expanding. Still, compared to previous cycles, XRP now appears far more prepared to survive difficult conditions because it has stronger institutional foundations, clearer legal standing, and growing utility narratives supporting its ecosystem. Many investors believe that difference could make XRP more resilient during future market corrections compared to earlier years when speculation was the primary driver behind price action. As we look ahead toward the rest of 2026, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. XRP is entering a completely new chapter. The days when the entire conversation revolved around court battles and uncertainty are fading. Now the focus is shifting toward adoption, infrastructure, regulation, and institutional expansion. That doesn't mean the road ahead will be smooth because crypto markets are always volatile, and XRP will likely continue experiencing sharp price swings along the way. But fundamentally, the environment surrounding Ripple today looks stronger than it has in years. Investors are watching ETF inflows, whale accumulation, banking integrations, and legal developments all aligning at the same time. Markets thrive on momentum, and XRP appears to be building exactly that. Whether the next breakout happens this month or later in the year, the setup forming around Ripple has captured the attention of both retail traders and institutional players across the financial world. The coming months could become some of the most important in XRP's history if these developments continue accelerating. And finally, for everyone watching XRP closely right now, patience may become one of the most important factors moving forward. Markets often test investors emotionally during consolidation phases, especially before major moves occur. Right now, XRP remains trapped between excitement and confirmation. The bullish narrative is growing stronger, but traders still want to see technical breakouts fully validated before declaring the next major rally officially underway. That's why the $1.50 level remains such an important line in the sand. A strong breakout above that zone could change sentiment very quickly across the market. Until then, investors continue analyzing every headline, every whale transaction, and every institutional development connected to Ripple and the XRP Ledger. One thing is certain, though. XRP is no longer being ignored. The asset has firmly returned to the center of crypto discussions, and the combination of regulation, institutional adoption, and expanding utility has created one of the most fascinating stories in the entire market right now. Stay locked in here on XRP Insider, because the next phase for Ripple and XRP could end up being even bigger than most people expect.